Welcome back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. I'm Dr. Michelina AF, hashtag that felon doctor, here to talk to you about sloth today. And thankfully, this is one of those that I don't struggle with. Thank God. There is one that I do not struggle with and probably never will, because sloth is really a disinclination to do anything. You don't want to exert, you don't want to put forth effort. You're just kind of content to do nothing. You're kind of content to be in a space where you're not working on or towards or doing much of anything. People who are prone to sloth, perhaps, are people who are good at being and not so great at doing. And I, thank the good Lord, am not that. I am good at doing. I'm not great at being. I have to work to sit and just be. And so even when I'm sitting, I'm always thinking. I'm always doing things with my brain. So like sloth is not one that I really personally struggle with, but disinclination to do things will have you kind of becoming sedentary is the word I'm looking for there, and I'll have you kind of like stagnant, right? You won't grow. You'll just plop. You'll just plant. You will just be sort of in your habitat, not really wanting to be roused or moved. We see this a lot in people who, and I'm not trying to judge at all, but people who kind of are alcoholics. I think of the men in the generation of my father's generation, the men who are like, I don't know, 45 to 65, and they come home and then they just like crack open beers and just plop on the couch and don't move for like 4 hours to really do anything. And I've seen that enough to know that like that's pretty much a thing that happens a lot in the generation of those men and potentially those women, but I actually haven't really seen it that way. It tends to be more the men that struggle with sloth in that generation. That's not to say in their professional lives that they do. They're like very industrious in their professional lives, and in their personal lives, they're very sloth-ridden. I don't really know. And we see that divide between personal and professional a lot, where it's like, hey, I can show up in this way in my job, but I don't show up like this at my house. And that's something that I always talk about with like authenticity, is like you show up the same no matter where you are. Like Michelina behind closed doors is the same as Michelina out in the public. Like it's not very different. And so that's something I've worked really hard to make sure is the case. And even still, like it does take work. It's got to be intentional. Like it's also easy now because like I live by myself, so it's easy because you're not dealing with people when you live by yourself, so it's kind of easier to just be at peace versus when you're out among the Commonwealth. But anyway, back to sloth. So yes, when you're struggling with sloth, please do not get it twisted with depression, okay? You can be slothy because you are depressed. That's certainly true. Like when you are depressed, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to get up. You don't want to live. You don't want to do anything. You're at like high levels of low level, really. You like don't have it in you to move. If you've really been depressed, you know what that feels like. And so it's going to feel sloth-like because it is, everything's slowed down. You have a disinclination to do anything. So, and like I said, I have 100% experienced that. 1000%. I've been depressed over the last 5 years a multitude of times. And so if you've ever been there, you know what it feels like to kind of have that sloth tendency. But don't get it confused with depression. Like if you are naturally disinclined to do things, it doesn't necessarily mean you're depressed. But if you are depressed, you probably are naturally disinclined to do things. So sloth is an interesting one because it is really just like, a lot of times I feel like it has to do with you're not in your interest. Or if you struggle with sloth, you're not interested in anything, right? So that's the first thing. If you know you're not interested in anything, nothing holds your interest, you're not captivated by anything, you don't find joy in anything, like there's literally nothing that you're working toward, working on, searching for, wanting. You have none of that. There's nothing. It's just like flat. It's like stagnant. It's like, there's nothing really here. I don't really care. I'm not really roused. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's like, meh. Sloth is going to be in that place. Sloth is in that place of like, yeah, well, all right. Apathy will allow for sloth to occur for sure, because you're not building anything, you're not working toward anything, you're not doing anything. Like, there's a lot of death energy in sloth because it's like, well, I don't really care enough to do anything. So apathy and sloth go kind of hand in hand. And if you're somebody who's more inclined to get apathetic or to be apathetic, you might be more inclined towards sloth. Could also be trauma. Everything's a trauma response, right? But like, any of these could also be things that you've taken on because the world is heavy, or relationships are hard, or you didn't have needs met as a child, or you had traumatic experiences happen as a child, or you have adversity you didn't overcome. Like, there's a million reasons why we could show up in these patterns and behaviors in these ways and forms, right? Right now, we're just trying to bring awareness to where your struggle might be, where your pitfall might be, because everybody's got vices. Everybody has vices, just like everybody has virtues. Like, we've all got light and dark in us. We all have good and not so good. And so this is to help bring awareness around that. Also, I think sloth has a lot to do with pairing, right? You pair things with sloth. Like, alcohol naturally lends itself to sitting around and doing nothing. Smoking weed naturally lends itself to sitting around and doing nothing. Like, there are certain activities you might be doing that allow for sloth to happen. The TV, dear Lord, the TV lends itself to sitting around and doing nothing. So if you can just change that behavior and pair it differently, like if you're struggling with sloth and the minute you turn the TV on, you're going to do nothing, then this is what I used to do. I would have to earn my TV time. So I'd be like, okay, I want to watch, I think I was watching Jane the Virgin at the time, and it was on Netflix. It still is on Netflix, I think. And I was like, okay, if I want to watch this, I'm going to walk and watch it. And so I'd watch it on my phone while I would walk, because I was trying to get myself into good habits and good behavior patterns. And so there are certain things that we can do that will lead us to be a little bit more like maybe physically lazy. If I'm reading a book, I'm going to be laying down or sitting down or reading it. If I'm doing work at a computer, I'm going to be sitting at the computer, right? So like, you want to find these areas where you're maybe not being as active. Physically, it's always easier to see. Mentally, emotionally, that's a little bit trickier. And that apathy is a good indication of sloth, right? Like, if you don't care about anything, emotionally you don't care, you're cut off, you're dissociated, you're split from any emotion. Sloth, emotional sloth you've got. If you mentally are like drained, don't care, not here for it, have no goals, have no ambitions, have nothing to work toward, you could be dealing with some sloth mentally. And because everything applies to all the ways in which we grow, right? So there's all these ways that these things can crop up in our lives that we just don't realize. And I hope that we're bringing some awareness around this for you and to you. And so, yes, if this is something that is resonating with you, take the steps to find the places where you might be more prone to sloth and see where you can change some of those habits so that you're at least getting a little momentum. Because I think it's Newton's first or second law. An object at rest stays at rest, an object in motion stays in motion. I think it's maybe the first law. And so if you're at rest, it's going to be harder to get yourself going. Whereas if once you start getting yourself going, building a little momentum, things will start building in your favor. And so 95% of the people don't live the lives that they truly desire to live. And so like, don't be the 95%, be the 5%, And so if you want to be the 5%, you want to transform, you want to develop, you want to show up differently in your life, you want meaningful existence, hang out here. That's what we're doing. So like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment below, tell your friends, and I will keep bringing all of this to you, all kinds of different topics to help you grow and expand and learn more about yourself, become more self-aware, and develop in different ways. And I appreciate you guys being here. I hope this is helpful to you, and I will see you guys on the next video.